This is All Ears. I'm Everett Hopfner. I'm a pianist, a new music explorer, and the host of this podcast. On each episode of All Ears, you'll hear conversations with my musical friends, mentors, and the many people who inspire me. My guest on this episode is Daniel Espie. He is a very brilliant, very sensitive pianist from the United States who's currently based in London as he completes his graduate studies at the Royal Academy of Music. I had the great pleasure to meet him this past summer at the Casal Maggiore Festival in Italy. He's a delightful person. He's really invested in collaboration between instruments and across artistic disciplines. And on one of our last days together in Italy, we sat down in the dorm room and had this conversation coming up right now. Dan, let me officially welcome you to All Ears, and thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks, Ev.
Tell me a bit about where you grew up.
Yeah, sure. I was born in London, but moved to the Philadelphia area when I was 3 with my family, and we lived in a suburb and went to a public school system, and so I sort of just participated in the music scene through there and got piano lessons and all that stuff, and ended up just like really enjoying the social environment, and kind of just went from there.
Were there opportunities for you as a young beginner pianist to work with other musicians already from a young age?
As a pianist, no. That was more of an isolating, looming thing, which can be tough for children. But what really got me into music was band, and I was a saxophone player. And basically from 4th grade, so that would have been age 10 or so, I was playing saxophone in the band, and was able to make a whole lot of friends through that, and that's what sort of motivated me to do music. And it wasn't until much later where I decided I wanted to invest in piano instead.
How did you end up starting piano lessons? Is it something your parents wanted to do, or is it something you wanted?
No, the piano thing was, I played the instruments that my mother played. She played the saxophone, and she played the piano, and she would sit down and play Yesterday by Paul McCartney on the piano, and I always thought, man, that's really cool, I want to do that. So she signed me up for lessons, and obviously, the story is not unique. I didn't want to practice, blah, 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 but she sort of kicked my butt for about 10 years, until I developed the motivation for myself.
You started kicking your own butt?
Yeah, exactly.
At what point in your training did that happen? Did it start to kick in, and how did you decide to pursue music beyond high school?
As a sort of self-motivation thing. I think it happened probably around 10th or 11th grade. That was the point where I started going into these summer get-together festivals. There was one in particular at Penn State University that I went to 3 or 4 times. And I met some really great teachers and some really great players who sort of just opened my eyes to this world that I was kind of unaware of. And I think that's all it really takes, I think, is like that spark, that little bit of inspiration for you to realize, oh, this is something that I now realize means a lot to me. And as a 16-year-old to encounter that experience is quite profound, I think. It's something difficult to explain, but you know that it is what it is. So I just sort of went from there and figured I would figure things out as they went.
You decided to study music in college.
Yeah.
Where did you end up, and how did you make that decision?
I ended up back in Philadelphia eventually. I did end up spending a year at Penn State, and then I transferred to Temple University, just because I realized I needed to be in an urban setting in a city, and it was a choice I ended up being really happy I made, because I really fell in love with the city of Philadelphia, having spent my whole life in a suburb outside of it, just to be able to interact with it and participate in the music scene, and just to see like a world-class operating city and be a part of it was really cool.
Can you tell me a bit about the scene in Philadelphia and what sort of things you were attracted to and what you experienced?
Sure. When I was there, they were really good for students because you could get cheap tickets to see the Philadelphia Orchestra, which is amazing. There's a chamber music society in Philadelphia, and it's really good. They bring in great people, and through Temple, I could get free tickets for that. And on top of that, Temple was just a really cool university, because the piano department itself had a great reputation for churning out amazing solo pianists. But on top of that, you had other people in other departments that were into totally wacky new music stuff, or concert band stuff that was really great, or just you name it. And the fact that it was a public university meant that I was doing literature courses and mathematics courses and all that stuff, and was able to really sort of dig into a holistic educational setting. And I think that was good at that point.
Can you tell me about maybe some of the little artistic highlights of your time in Temple and kind of the way that your journey developed in those years?
Sure. I studied with a guy called Harvey Wadeen, who was basically the grandfather of the piano department at that school, and I studied with him almost through my entire schooling there at Temple. And he was just a very big mover and shaker for me, just in terms of opening my ears and eyes up to my own potentials and just the beauties of different composers. Bach and Schumann in particular were the two that he really pushed on his students, and we just learned a lot from him. But on top of that, I did stuff with the Wind Symphony at Temple. The director there now, Emily Trinan, does a lot of really cool curation, in that she's active with a lot of composers and really tries to keep the repertoire fresh. And obviously, if she's bringing in a good amount of pieces that involve piano, some that feature the piano, it was cool for me, but I think it's also cool for the school and the music department, because it's a pretty up-and-coming ensemble, and it's starting to get some good press from big names. So there's that, and there's a pretty good orchestra there, which I never played with, but was able to obviously hear them 3 times a semester, and they would do just great rep. There's a really killing percussion ensemble. And the other thing on top of that is that the jazz program at Temple is amazing. I mean, it's one of the best schools, undoubtedly, in the country. And some of my closest friends were performing with pros on the Philly jazz scene. And just to be able to go see that and experience performance on that side was really cool for me, because it got me thinking just a lot about the state of classical performance and where we're at.
And what did you notice? What do you take away from hearing all this diverse repertoire from people your age?
Well, I think the revealing thing is that there's so much more than the standard rep that you're most bound to hear at piano recitals or orchestral recitals, and you get this really heavy feeling that you need to push and break past that and find what exactly it is that clicks for you, and that's a process. It doesn't just happen, obviously, but you have to engage. I think that's really what I took from it, is that you have to engage and find what you enjoy.
And how would you say that your own tastes changed over that time? Did you have a certain favorite composer coming in that you reconsidered along the way, or how did your musical tastes change over the course of those years?
Yeah, probably. I think I just developed less of a love for the straight-up virtuosic piano style. I think a lot of kids really dig stuff like Liszt and Rachmaninoff. Not to say Rachmaninoff's not great, but I think coming out of my schooling, I had a deeper appreciation for what I consider to be great great music, and that's not always flashy, showy, pianistic stuff. It can involve all sorts of musicality, and I think that's really what I developed.
Can you give some examples? Like, what would you say are your favorites now? Like, what are you really digging?
I think for me, Bach has become sort of a god figure for me. Bach and Brahms, I've learned to really love. But on top of that, I spent a good deal of time learning the music of Samuel Barber, and that was cool for me because he was kind of a Philly-related guy, and from there, the doors just keep opening, and you can talk and talk forever. But you have your figureheads, and you go from there, I guess.
What year did you graduate from Temple?
I graduated in 2013.
And how did you make the decision to decide what to do next?
Well, I was staying in Philadelphia at the time. I was actually going to stay at Temple and do a master's. And then within the first few months, I had a realization that I sort of needed to rock the boat, so to speak, and mix things up a bit. I applied to schools all over the States, and then one school in London, just for the hell of it. And that ended up being the school that I went to. So now I live in London, and I'm sort of playing around with that city and sussing it out.
What factors go into making that decision?
So many. I mean, just you have to make sure that your financial situation is rock solid, first of all, because to move out to another country, especially England, where the pound is incredibly expensive to come from the States. On top of that, you have to take the leap of faith that the culture of another country is going to vibe well with your personality and your sort of attitude towards a lot of things. And of course, you can't know that going in. But for me, one of the things was I went out to the school to visit it, and just loved the vibe of it, and was able to meet the guy that I would study with the next year, and had a lesson with him, and just really, really enjoyed it, and walked away from it going, I had a feeling in my gut that was saying, yes, this is it, this is what you got to do. I just went for it.
When did you land?
I landed end of August 2014.
And what were the first few weeks like when you made that move? Got off the plane?
They were weird. I was living with my aunt and uncle, which was definitely a good comfort, not to have to jump right into finding a place. But figuring out a new country and the way that their banks work and the way that their education system works and their transportation system works, it's very strange. It's very strange, and I kept saying to myself, at least they speak English, because if they were speaking another language, I'd be screwed.
And so how did your whole feeling about the city change once you started your studies?
Well, once I started my studies, I didn't really explore the city much because I was spending just about every day at school. And very slowly but surely, I started getting my feelers out to the city. It wasn't like moving to Philadelphia at all. And that was surprising to me because I guess I had just assumed. But one of the things in Philadelphia was I had a bike, and I biked everywhere. And I sort of figured out the ins and outs of the city within the first year I was there. And I've been in London now for a year, and I feel like I'm still getting lost, and I don't know any of the street names, and I wouldn't dare get on a bike because the traffic is crazy. So it's just a completely different experience.
So you wrapped up your first year at the Royal Academy?
Yeah.
How would you describe it? What have you been up to, and how are you feeling about it?
Well, I'm feeling really good, actually, which is a good sign, I suppose. This is my first experience in a conservatory, which was different because you're now just doing music all the time. So that was a level of intensity that I had to acclimatize myself to. On top of that, one of the things that they really push at Academy, especially in your master's, is you have to be able to walk away from 2 years of study with the conviction of what it is that you want to be doing. So that's kind of what I spent my last year trying to wrap my head around. And of course, that's part of the journey that it's going to take my whole life. But this was definitely the first year where I started seriously thinking about what are the kind of collaborations that I want to be doing? What's the kind of music that I want to be playing and learning? Because now no one's telling me what to do. And now no one's saying, can you play in this ensemble? Can you do this? Now it's, if I want to do something, I have to find the players, and I have to find the venue and all that stuff. So that level of proactivity, I think has been really actually helpful.
And how has it been working with your new teachers and your new collaborators?
Really good. Obviously, with new teachers, you have to figure each other out. So the first month, 2, 3 can be rocky. And for me, so I'm starting with Rustam Hayrudinov now, and he's Russian-trained guy, Moscow Conservatory, and then he studied at the academy. But his method is very much based in this sort of Moscow method, so to speak, where you prepare the music really well and bring it to your lesson to the point where it's memorized at the first lesson. And he doesn't really hold your hand and take you through the fingerings and the phrasings. It's more like you turn up to play, and he works with you as if it were a performance. So there's a different level of expectation there that I had to get used to, and that took me some time because, of course, it was frustrating for me. So I got used to that. Sort of, hopped around the school a bit, played with different people, duo stuff, trio stuff, and ended up doing a good number of gigs towards the end of the school year with a group that's bass. It's piano, string quartet, and clarinet, and we do all sorts of rep. And that thing has been really the thing that's been flowing in terms of collaborative piano for me the most in the last 2 months or so.
Does that group have a name?
Yeah, we're called the Temple Ensemble, and it actually has nothing to do with where I did my undergrad. A complete coincidence, because the group existed beforehand. It was named after the tube stop, Temple. But of course all my friends back home think I'm a narcissist because I now play in the Temple Ensemble.
We are talking in person right now in a tiny Italian town that is very dear to my heart. So you're here for the first time in Casalmaggiore. This is my summer home. I've been here 7 years in a row. So as a fresh newcomer with new perspective, how do you feel about your time here, and what have you enjoyed?
Well, it's been a wacky 3 weeks. And it's been a pretty incredible learning experience, I think, just because they really sort of kick you onto the stage and say, go do it, and you sort of hope for the best. And in that regard, it's been quite educational. But also, it's been really cool because everyone sort of comes here with their own projects and ideas, and obviously to be able to do the Fluxus thing with you last night was amazing, and to be able to work with Neg, who's so involved in Canadian contemporary music and just contemporary music in general, and to be able to collaborate with really great string players. It's been a trip. It's been really, really cool. And also just to be in Italy, in a town where no one speaks English, and to learn basically the important words, which are coffee and aqua. It's been cool. Yeah, it's been really cool.
Why bother with summer festivals at all? What's the appeal?
The great reminder, I think, for me coming here was when you step outside of your general working place, a different energy sort of erupts within you. So towards the end of the first year at Academy, I noticed that a lot of the people were getting tired. Obviously, we were at that school every day, all year. You're going to get tired. But the other thing was that the coaching sessions were starting to hit a wall. And part of that was my own playing. Part of that was the teachers just getting tired of it. And, of course, the people that I was playing with. You come here, you spend 3 weeks out of 52 in a year. Everyone comes from a different place. You don't really know each other. A lot of the habits that you build up with people that you work with every day are thrown out the window. And what comes with that is you get a completely fresh perspective. So I think while it's frustrating and difficult and stressful, it's really, really important because you come away with a fresh perspective. Is really what it is.
What else do you have coming up this summer?
So the Temple Ensemble is going on a tour in France, the Bordeaux area. Our clarinetist sort of has a home base there, which we're going to stay at, and basically for a week we drive out to various provincial towns and give concerts, and hope that someone in our group can speak decent enough French that we can feed ourselves, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And we're bringing 4 singers with us, so I'll do some song stuff, and they're singing with the string quartet. And yeah, we just do these wacky mixed programs that people really enjoy. So we played around with it a bit at churches around the London area, and I think we've sort of come to a place of understanding just how to construct our programs with so many different players, because we're going into each concert with 10 performers, and that's, for chamber music, that's a lot. That's a big number. So figuring that out has been a rocky road, but also sort of very rewarding. So we're going to go with that in France. And then other small things. I'm playing with the cellist at the end of August in a church. We're doing a lunchtime concert. Prokofiev and Delius and maybe some other goodies. And then school starts in September, so, we just get the ball rolling from there.
How do you see the end of your time at the Royal Academy lining up?
Good question. I think for me, I have to find a good balance between solo work and collaborative work and what is becoming more multimedia type work. The degree that I'm doing forces me to do what's called a concert project, which I'm formulating ideas for. But basically what I want to do is take music of Takemitsu and other contemporaries, and also work with a buddy of mine who does film, and combine those and get chamber musicians in and basically create a concert out of it that is not your standard sort of classical performance. And I want to see where that goes. And obviously, various projects along the way, you see where it goes. But at the moment, the ride is going pretty well. So, we'll see what happens.
Dan, we have a recurring segment on All Ears named after Mr. Rogers. We'll call it the Mr. Rogers Memorial People Are Excellent Moment of the Day. So, in which we pay tribute to the fine people that have helped us along the way get to where we are musically, personally, in our lives. So is there someone in mind for who you'd like to kind of
the shout out of the day?
I
mentioned him earlier, actually. My teacher at Temple, Harvey Woodine, was definitely, without a doubt, has been the most profound teacher for me in my life. And when I moved to London, he was ill, and he passed away in April. So, the last few months for me have been very sort of reflective of the time that I was able to spend with him. And, of course, in these times of loss and grief, you realize the impact that someone has had on you. Not that I hadn't really known that beforehand, but definitely, you get a great teacher in your life, and it can rock your world. And for me, it was him. And he always said, he was such an old school guy where he didn't enjoy music written after 1930, and he would tell you that quite explicitly. But his message too was always, you have to figure out what works for you, and you have to embrace your own uniqueness. And to hear a teacher of classical piano say that is, it's earth shattering, I think. So that's that was good.
It's really nice. When you look back on your years studying with him, are there any particular moments that you look back on with great particular fondness, or anything in particular that really hits home?
Well, there are certain pieces that I worked with him on that, those moments of revelation. It was Brahms' Opus 76, which I've been bringing back into my repertoire slowly as sort of a personal memorial to him. amazing pieces, but he was able to just push me to be expressive in a way that I hadn't been. Likewise, the Symphonic Etudes of Schumann, which are just amazing, amazing pieces. Just Bach in general, and I think those three pieces for me were the big ones.
And these are pieces that I'm sure you'll have a chance to return to over and over again in your life, and how nicely you'll always have this kind of personal connection to those pieces to bring that always back.
Absolutely.
And when you end up teaching them too, I mean, these ideas that we gain end up living on whether or not we're conscious of it.
And that's the beauty, I think, of this art form, is that there's such a strong base. When people say classical music is dying, the base is so strong, the tradition is so strong, and I don't think that people truly are conscious of that. I'm not conscious of it to its entirety, but you think about every musician that you go see perform has gotten so many lessons from so many different people. It's an incredible art form that just gets passed from person to person to person to audience to performer, and it's not dying.
Finally, Dan, how can the fine listeners of this show keep up with you and see what you're doing?
I have a website, danielespie.com, and then the Temple Ensemble is thetemplensemble.co.uk. Those are the big things. I have a SoundCloud too, and I believe it's just Dan Espie, soundcloud.com/Dan Espie. But if you type in my name, the stuff's there. I've got recordings of there. I try and update it from time to time.
Great, and I'll have links to all of those platforms in the show notes for this episode.
Cool.
Dan, we've done it. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a joy to get to know you here, and I look forward to keeping up with you over the coming years and seeing what you've got going on.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Great.
That is it for this episode of All Ears. Thank you so much to Dan. During that conversation, Dan just mentioned the Fluxus concert that we were both performing in Casal Majora. That concert was a real highlight of my summer and a really special evening for everybody involved. I actually wrote a blog post about that concert, and you can see it on my website, where you can also find show notes and links for this episode and for all of my past guests on All Ears. That is all at everetthopfner.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at evhopf, that's EVHOPF, and follow the show at This Is All Ears. If you like the podcast, you can subscribe through Stitcher or iTunes, and you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like the podcast, you can help us out. You can recommend All Ears to your friends. You can leave us a review on the iTunes Store or on Stitcher. All Ears is back in mid-September. We'll talk to you then.